So our speaker for over 40 years, Chinary Ung, has developed a musical language that indicates an open ear toward the sounds of the East, Southeast Asia, and native Cambodia in particular, as well as textures and instrumental practices of contemporary Western music, Western concert music. From the solo cello piece Stige to the Graumeyer Award-winning Inner Voices, to the epic Aura, Ung's music is characterized by a vivid sound world with an intense emotional trajectory. Ung's extensive orchestral catalog has been commissioned and performed by major orchestras throughout the United States and abroad. Boston Modern Orchestra Project released a recording of Ung's orchestral music in 2015. His work has been commissioned by the Meet the Composers Reader's Digest Commissioning Program, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Ford, Kusevitsky, Joyce, and Barlow Foundations. In 2014, he was given the John D. Rockefeller Third Award by the Asian Cultural Council. He was inducted into the American Academy of Arts and Letters in 2020. Ung has worked with numerous institutions who share his dedication towards preserving Cambodian culture and forging cultural exchange between Asia and the West. As an educator, Ung has instructed generations of young composers at several institutions in the United States, and now through a series of residencies in Asia as well. Since 1995, he has served on the faculty of UC San Diego, where he is Distinguished Professor of Music. Please welcome our fourth keynote speaker for this conference, speaking on the topic of creation, Dr. Chinary Ung.
I would like to thank Dean Verne de la Peña, Conference Director of the Asia Pacific Society for Ethnomusicology, APSE Conference, and would like also to thank Dr. Ramon P. Santos, a national artist of the Philippines, for this invitation. I would like to dedicate this brief talk to the late Dr. Jose Maceda, a national artist of the Philippines. He truly had influenced me during my formative years as a graduate student in composition at Columbia University in the 1970s, both conceptually and environmentally. Over 5 decades ago, I set out to compose a song cycle. Initially, I was a little fearful because I felt obligated to use an English text. It seemed that I had no other language choice at that time. I was a first-year graduate student at Columbia University in New York City, composing my Opus 1. At one point, I became puzzled over how to set the last song of the cycle. A wind has blown the rain away and blown, by E. Cummings. I was not familiar with the English language, and it was my first encounter setting on English to music. One clause in particular, a wind has blown rain away, blocked me from moving forward. It wasn't, however, the English language that was troublesome, but the presentation of the vocal line. At one point, I imagined a child sitting on the floor in the corner of a room, crying and with a clearly trembling voice. An adult approached the child and asked, "Why are you crying?" The distraught child answered in a quivering and slightly choked up voice. Attracted to the scenario, I begin to imagine spaces or rest of varying durations inserted in between words and even in between syllables. I realize how one can make meaning out of this daydream without copying the imagery directly, and how contextually one can draw a closer meaning of the text to the child's emotion. So the trembling, choking, and other emotional utterances prompted me to create what I term broken line, in other words, a fragmented melodic line. I further imagine other related terms, for example, broken heart or broken speech. I also discovered that a broken line in music gave rise to the essence of the musical flow. Now, over half of a century later, broken line is one of a few dozen ingredients that define my musical style. I apply the imagined child's emotion to the E. Cummings clause, a wind has blown the rain away, shown spatially as follow. A wind has blown the rain away. In retrospect, I believe that I was attracted to not only what caused the child's trembling voice, but more so to how the time rests inserted between both syllables and words affects the presentation. Two results came out of this investigation. One, choreographing the duration of time between utterances or sound. Two, reutilizing the broken line idea in different contexts, for example, instrumental music. In fact, the latter can be found in my pieces as Mohori for mezzo-soprano and chamber ensemble, in the voices for full orchestra, Spiral 1 for cello, piano, and percussion, and more. In short, the emotionally broken speech of the child is manifested in the musically broken line of the soprano in Tall Wind. I began teaching at Connecticut College in 1979 following the fall of the Khmer. The aftermath of the genocide and its contribution to the ongoing humanitarian crisis resulted in the death, displacement, or resettlement abroad of millions of Cambodians. The following animation illustrates a vision I had of various human sufferings.
Now imagine this. You are a dancer. You are moving forward as dusk. Suddenly, you are experiencing incoming luminous, translucent, multicolored arrows shooting at you, coming from the opposite end of the road at various velocities. Do not be frightened. Be well composed. You are a dancer, so move with grace and force. Bend your body, curve your arms in rhythm, angle your limbs, all with mind and spirit traversing in empty spaces, small or large, between those arrows in motion. Take control and be a master in resolving this problem without being wounded and shivering like a little bird after a rainstorm.
The inspiration for Inner Voices, 1986, for full orchestra was from a dream I had during my time teaching at Northern Illinois University in the late 1970s. This time period coincides with the reign of the Khmer, a genocidal regime in my native country, Cambodia. This is the dream as I remember it. In the dream, I felt I received an invitation to attend a ritual. Suddenly, I found myself marching on dirt road in a rural area of Cambodia, along with other Khmer compatriots at dusk. As a group, our steps were in slow motion. It took a while to realize that I was in the middle of the funeral procession. Later, I heard women voices singing in unison. The music was very slow and it was full of phonemes between the words. The overall meaning of the text was slowly revealed. At the precise moment that I finally understood the meaning of the Khmer text, I quickly looked back and saw hundreds of marchers as well as a dead body being lifted in the air. In brief, the text was set to a funeral song as requested by the deceased to her parents. Also, it had to be sung by a group of women during her funeral. The text was not a lamentation, but rather a highly emotional and harsh curse. She had requested her parents to set her suicide note for voices. The text spelled out the unfairness of the broken social fabric and the suffering of the people and the upheaval that occurred during the genocidal era. Following an evening concert during the festival conference of the Asian Composer League in Korea in 1977, I recall my late mentor, Verne Jung, and I catching up on news. I share my then still fresh and vivid dream with him. In short, Joe was encouraging, and he said, "This dream needs a symphony." 8 years later, I was commissioned to compose an orchestral piece for the Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra. The excerpt we are going to listen is found 2/3 of the way into Inner Voices. It addresses both the tangible and the intangible, as well as a musical expression that is both personal and communal. This passage is the representation of the dream I had, and music is built on 3 layers of textures. One layer is the simultaneous attacks of a low static chord in the harp, piano, multiple percussion, and string, and occurs roughly every 10 seconds. This layer represents the slow and exaggerated step of the otherworldly marchers. The second layer contains the prominent English horn solo and portrays the dead body being lifted into the air. The English horn suggests the sound quality of the sralai, a quadruple reed wind instrument unique to Cambodia. Here, it sound signify the spirit world. The remaining third layer contains highly elaborated woodwind lines based around a sustained perfect fifth and contributes to the general dark atmosphere, pointing to the Cambodian genocidal. Let's listen to the clip from Inner Voices. around the year 2000, long after the Khmer Rouge era, I decided to visit my native country. I was overjoyed to see family and former classmates from the music school. Unfortunately, many of them were no longer alive. Aside from visiting numerous places, for example, my native village, Preluvia, in Takeo, I went to visit many ancient stone monuments in Siem Reap. One in particular, Neak, as seen here, is distinctly different from the other hundreds of small or large monuments. Neak consists of 5 pools, a water cosmology mandala reflecting the 5 elements of the universe: water, fire, earth, air, and ether. It was said to be a healing place during the reign of Jayavarman VII in the 12th century during the Khmer Empire. The name Neak literally means intertwining dragon, thus intriguing. In its central pool stands a small pre-Buddhahood monument. Incidentally, this marked an historical shift from the practice of Hinduism to Buddhism. This is the circular central pool located in the middle of the 4 square-shaped pool representing water, fire, earth, and air. The central pool is said to be the 5th element, the ethereal space, or the spiritual, if you will. It is mounted in the center of the larger reservoir. Although each of the 5 pools represents a distinct element, it is remarkable how all pools of water are interconnected and suggest a oneness. Most importantly, however, is to recognize that the 2 dragons are encompassed at the base of the circular monument mandala. As you can see, the 2 heads of a 7-headed dragon are regarded as the fearsome protector of the temple. This very idea gave rise to the applied intertwining lines in my composition, in particular Spiral 11, Mother and Child, for singing violists, whose design focuses on the image of 2 intertwining dragons seen here. Let's listen to the opening of Spiral 11 for singing violist. When I lived in Cambodia, I recall the reddish domestic cow named Mikraham, or Lady Red. There is a quaint literalism in the use of the Cambodian language. Similarly, there is a smaller monument known as Prakan, which means sword. On the first floor of this two-story open wall monument, the columns are cylindrical to represent the handle of a sword, and on the second floor, the columns are cubic to represent the blade. Before I go any further, however, I would like to address the topic of instrumentalist vocalizing in my music. The first appearance of the vocalization appears in Grand Alap in 1997. At first, I thought this exploration into vocalizing was going to be limited to just this one piece. The two performers who commissioned Grand Alap, cellist Maya Bezer and percussionist Stephen Schick, are both extraordinary performers. Their abilities and performances of my piece, however, gave me the necessary confidence that this approach was possible and worthwhile. But that isn't the whole story. I discovered with the use of vocalizing instrumentalists a way for instrumental music to heighten the expression of the musical line. You see, in conventional life, people don't ordinarily sing. But in opera, for example, people sing because they are feeling something extraordinary that cannot be expressed with mere speech. The same can be said about the purpose of vocalizing in my music. So in 2007, 8 years after the last Sparrow piece, the Sparrow series resumed to incorporate vocalization as well as other works of mine. In my recent work, 4 Elements for Singing Marimba Player, I relate each movement to one of Nippon's 4 outer pools representing water, earth, fire, and air. On different note, I just want to say that 4 Elements is dedicated to the memory of the New Zealand composer Jack Boddy, 1944 to 2015. Jack had a deep appreciation for the musical tradition of Southeast Asia, Indonesia in particular. He was a dear friend and colleague of mine. Let's listen to a clip of Burr Johnston's reading of the fire element. Sparrow 14 is one of the more recent pieces in the Sparrow series. In this work, the focus is on applying spiraling sonic material by means of recalling recently, and newly stated material to propel the spiral concept forward. Starting from the second page onwards of the scrolling score, you will hear and see the two pairs of the intertwining lines. Each percussion part independently intertwines their percussion line with their shouting, as well as entwine their parts with each other in various sonic configuration. Some Buddhists believe that during the Enlightenment there is neither melody nor rhythm. One of my intentions in Aura was to sonically represent the Buddha's moment of enlightenment. In Aura, each of the 6 bow kritalis, a metallic bell-like quality, represents one of the 6 colors of the aura, the circular-shaped illumination surrounding the head of the Buddha that consists of light in blue, red, yellow, white, reddish, and diamond. Incidentally, the spiritual meaning of the Buddha's aura is radiating infinite compassion. In the end, the Buddha's aura is expressed by the collective resonance of the bow kritalis whistling, the violin, and viola harmonics. This is the only passage in the 45-minute work without pulse or rhythm. During the initial conception of aura, I let my mind wander in an attempt to grasp onto something. While walking back and forth in my office, I noticed my Cambodian English dictionary. I believe as a result of synchronicity, I opened up the dictionary and my eyes landed on the Khmer word Chopon Rangsei, and it spelled out the 6 color. Let's listen to the part of aura. At this point, I can say that my music is in a parallel relationship with my native Khmer culture. With this in mind, I would like to close on the important Buddhist concept of sunyata or emptiness and how I sonically incorporate emptiness into my compositions. One important question I ask myself was how to interpret and illuminate through music and orchestration the profoundness of emptiness. What I arrived at was to simultaneously present a texture of musical lines in two extreme registers, for example, 5 octaves apart. One hears a register void between the extremes. I call texture the emptiness texture. In between these two extreme textures, around middle C, is a clearly defined texture of colorful attacks I call the compassion texture. Pairing emptiness with compassion is a basic altruistic practice in the East, in particular Cambodia. With this in mind, let's listen to the clip from Rain Your Tears. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ung. So at this time, we will entertain your questions. We have until 2 o'clock for the discussion. Again, you may type your question in the Q&A box. Let me begin with the first question, and I already sent this to Dr. Ung earlier. And I'm intrigued by your first example, where your setting of the unfamiliar English text results into what you call a broken line or broken speech. And this reminds me very much of Homi Bhabha's notion of third space, where the syntax of the colonial language is intentionally ignored, thus producing a different set of meanings. Would you say that this was the principle at work as well in your composition? Thank you.
I had no knowledge of that. I think I was governed by in particular instinctual type of situation, what I call it daydreaming, and the daydreaming as a result solve my problem in terms of text setting. But right now I recognize what you said. I think that that is an interesting interesting way to look at the situation here, to analyze, or at least to observe it, and that in this kind of situation. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. We have several questions in the gallery. Jonas Baez has his hand raising. Could you turn on your microphone, Jonas?
Hello, Dr. Ung. Greetings. I'm still starstruck at seeing you. You know, you were actually one of the, this is a little background, this part of my question, but you were actually the people, one of the people, the important people to which myself and my two good friends, best friends, brothers, Verne de la Peña here and Chino Toledo grew up to at the UP College of Music. And we were so starstruck when we met you in 1981. I remember Chino pulling me to the library when I was first year. And he said, he told me, you should hear this. And he played Mohori on the record. And I said, like that. And I remember doing the same a year after to Verne when he was at the college, and you should hear this. My question has to do actually with a certain notion of consciousness, because I also keep wondering about this as I continue to become a composer in my own little way here. Are you in fact conscious of your music's trajectories? Are you conscious in the way of for whom you are writing, or is this something not in your imagination? Is this something that is just, okay, anybody who likes to listen to it, here it is? But do you have this, because I notice when I listen to your pieces, especially the Spiral, which I follow, the Spiral series and all that, I close my eyes and I feel a little, I feel a little identity there. I feel to identify with it. Maybe because I'm Asian, maybe because, but do you have that notion?
The what kind? You mean the consciousness
Of for whom you're writing the music?
Oh, I see.
For,
Yeah.
or is it not in your consciousness?
One time, I have to admit, one time when I was about to take a piece on tour, and I was asked to compose, in fact, Aura, and to be premiered in Cambodia and also in Hanoi. I had decided consciously to utilize some of the native instrument and to use it in the abstract way. With an hope to what should we call it? To arouse the subconscious mind of the people, or my people, in a way. And I had to say that some of them came to me after the performance of Aura in Phnom Penh, and they say that, gee, this sounds so familiar, but we don't know where they come from. So, yeah, that's that. But in general, no, I'm sorry, I don't. I don't think.
But that is fascinating. What happened in Aura? That's just fascinating for a composer, especially from this region. Thank you very much for everything, Dr.
You're most welcome. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Baez. I have a question here from the attendees. Dulce Punzalan asks, what was the most, excuse me, what was the most challenging aspects in creating Aura? Spiritual and musical aspects, Western chamber orchestras, 2 sopranos with the traditional bowed crotales, little cymbals, 16 zither, dantran, monochord, danbao, bamboo xylophone, dantrung, traditional drums. That is her question.
Yeah, the most challenging situation in Aura is the one movement piece, and it lasted 46 minutes. In length. That is the most challenging thing, and how to manage to go through 46 minutes, and it sounds like 15 minutes. Okay, and that is the most challenging thing. Yeah. Another thing that I had to say that that the sample that you just heard, it in a way it is in retrospect it is a challenge. It is a challenge to me until now, and this means that whether or not I should go with that direction, and I haven't answered to myself yet. That what is that direction? Direction, it means the sonic representation of aura that according to tradition, it has it does not have rhythm and melody. Okay, and in a way, this kind of writing gave rise to a kind of liberation that I now have. I now fall into a situation that I don't have to express my voices anymore. I can go somewhere else if I wanted to.
Thank you, thank you. There's a question from Dr. Sui Beng Tan. I was about to ask the same question, but let me call on her if she can turn on her microphone to read the question herself.
Hi, thanks so much for sharing your music with us. My question is, how has your music been in Cambodia and overseas, especially since you refer to the genocide and other problems in Cambodia?
Could you please repeat it again?
Yeah, so how has your music been accepted in Cambodia and as well as overseas, especially since you refer to the genocide and other problems in Cambodia? Have the people in Cambodia accepted your music, or do they have a chance to listen to it at all, or is it only for overseas people?
I can only guess that there might not, the Cambodian people might not have the opportunity to hear my music, okay, except a few close friends, at the university and all of that, yeah. But on the other hand, in the West, particularly in this country, in America, it is quite, it's quite common and people are familiar with my music. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tan. Anybody else who would like to ask a question? I take note from your brief bio that you are now active in engaging with younger composers in Southeast Asia. How has that process been, and what is your assessment of the current situation of contemporary or just composition in the region?
Right, it has been going very well. Thank you for asking that question. Over 10 years ago, my wife and I and some colleagues have joined together to form a small summer school. And so we have been teaching some of the native musicians to compose pieces again, and actually it's a kind of surprise that that composition has not been part of the activity even before the war, before the KR era, yeah, and now after 30 years after the war, we just start to it just began to start people start to compose new pieces, and that is really exciting. And prior to that, it was almost none at all. Yeah.
Thank you. We have probably around 10 more minutes. There's a question in Q&A. This is from Motohide. Taguchi. When you ask the players to sing, what kind of voices do you prefer? Example, Western classical way of singing, voices without Western classical training, non-Western types of singing, etc. Number two, in some musical traditions, the players sing while they are playing their instruments. Even in the countries having this kind of traditions with strong Western instruments, by the increasing interests to the search of possibilities of instruments, younger generations of musicians of traditional instruments tends to focus only on instruments. How do you think about this kind of situation?
Could you repeat the first question?
Yeah. I don't know if you can open the Q&A, so you can probably read it clearly from there. So the first question is, when you ask the players to sing, what kind of voices do you prefer?
Their voices. It's not like operatic voice. It's not like typical trained voices, and I love the untrained voices, and that's what I have been hearing when I was a child in Cambodia. And I think when they play the throat, the fiddle, and the sing and all of that, they're not really trained voices, and that is beautiful. And they sort of put the whole thing at the edge in a way that the art is so fragile. It's not secure. And another thing, my late mentor Cho Ben Chung wrote a brief statement when he referred to Spiral 11, mother and child that you heard during this presentation. He said that my wife, referred to my wife, the violist Susan. When Susan play her viola, is music to be heard. And when she play and sing at the same time, is music to be felt. And to him, represent the two vehicles that propelled in the journey toward enlightenment. Yeah, and so he mentioned to me his last teaching before he passed away is. He told me that I have the obligation to my people and to people in general how to explain my practice in the use of vocalization, because as you may know, for the past 30 years, that's all I'm doing. It's just asking instrumentalists to use their voices.
Thank you. And related to that, his second question is the tendency for younger generations to focus on traditional instruments instead of singing as well. And he says, how do you think about this kind of situation?
I'm not quite clear about that question.
Where in some musical traditions where they play and sing at the same time, however, in many traditions, the focus now of younger generations is on, I suppose, instrumental music and forgetting the idea that you sing and play at the same time.
You mean the generation in the West or in the generation elsewhere?
No, in Asia, I suppose.
Oh, in Asia, yeah. And what is the precise question?
That the younger generation just focus on the traditional music, traditional instrumental music, and forget totally about the aspect of singing and playing at the same time.
Oh, I see. I wouldn't know how to answer that actually, but what I can say that a lot of pieces that I know, traditional pieces, come from voices, from singing, from texts that reflect the society in certain era and so forth. And if you can find that, for example, in the Peña and ensemble, the predominantly percussion instrument with multiple lines and all that. But if you listen carefully, there is the embedment of hidden melodic line inside of that complex texture, and it's really interesting. And so if you want to excavate that, one needs to find the hidden melodic line inside the pinpeat. And where is the line come from? The line come from a folk song, okay? So in a way, like Satuka, the opening piece or the pinpeat before shadow theater, before a ceremonial event and all of that, I believe, my theory is that I believe it came from song. It means some 100 years ago or so was sung in Satuka. Okay, but that it became just instrumental line alone. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And we have another question from Dr. Muiko. Dr. Christine Muiko, are you able to turn on your microphone? Maybe we can put her in the panel crew. Christine Muiko.
Hello.
Is she here? Oh, there she is.
Kindly read na lang my question.
Oh, really?
Dean Verne, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dr. Muiko says, I'm curious about the connections of aura colors to the conceptual and structural aspect of your composition. Has anyone of your listeners shared that they felt the spectra of colors the same way as you felt or has connected this to Buddhism?
Does this question refer to some kind of spectra?
Dr. Ung, you mentioned earlier about the aura of colors and you connected this to Buddhism. So I'm curious about how has any one of your listeners actually shared the same way if they felt the same way as you felt about this spectral of colors connected to Buddhism, for example?
Oh, I don't believe so. I think what we are dealing with this conference is it's an in-house talking. I think yeah, it's just a meeting of the minds, and I think I do not mean to express something so specific. In fact, almost all the sample, perhaps all of the sample that you heard represent only 10% of each piece of music. Very, very little, even 5%. And I select them to talk about that because I thought it is unresolved in my career, and I want to share with you because it is unresolved. It is a challenge because I'm for example, let's say. Aura is one, and also a broken line. Also, it is somewhat, there is a little bit literal, physical a situation that I'm playing with. And I do not wish to claim this is the proper way for a younger composer to follow me. I think the best thing for them to do is to follow themselves. And I'm put it on the table at this conference, and this is the first conference that I'm placing this thing on the table because this is unresolved. And I don't know where this is going to lead. And so forth, but on the other hand, I think it is follow my my late mentor's footstep. It is my duty and my responsibility to explain to the people, and also to try to explain the universe, the nature. to make my own interpretation as someone who is who happened to fall into the creative field.
Thank you, Dr. Moicon. We have time for one more question, and I will cheat and take this opportunity to ask it. Since this is an ethnomusicological conference, and noting as well how active you have been in promoting the preservation of Cambodian and other Southeast Asian musical cultures, what would you say is the connection of traditional music to your practice as a composer, if there's a connection?
The short answer, if I may, I would like to give a brief answer by providing you an imaginative illustration. For example, if you think of a circle, okay, and if you trace a solid line from the 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. So they divided in circle into two. On the left is my tradition. So I play the runit, I play and my research in traditional music and so forth. So on the right is my composition. During the 80s, when I was thinking of that image, I promised myself I should not mix the two, my native music and my composing, meaning Western trained type of composition. But a few years later, the solid line that divided the circle become dotted line. Okay, and then a few more years, there is no line at all. There is only one circle. And maybe today there's not even a circle. Okay, so I don't bother to think about those imagery anymore. And so in a way, one thing that I had in mind, sort of slightly related to your question, I think is a very fine question. It doesn't mean better or less better or whatever. I have been placing myself in the front line all the time. Like the use of vocalization, and with the risk of not having so many performances for over 20 years already, but I'm still want to do that. And one of my colleagues asked me on the spur moment, he said, "Hey, Chinary, when you going to stop composing or asking players to sing all the time? When did you stop doing that?" I said, "It's very simple. My music will tell me to shut up, and then I shut up." And it's very simple. You don't make decision on those things. You shouldn't make the decision that what kind of color of sock on your deathbed you should wear. I think that's too much. And I think you should let go. Be a free person and a true spirit. Be free. I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm afraid that's all the time we have, but that is a fantastic finale. That is a fantastic resolution to a terrific presentation. We thank you, Dr. Chinary Ung.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Dr. Santos has a question. I'm sorry. Is that Dr. Santos?
I have been raising my hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not mean to ignore. Sorry, I did not see. Go ahead, sir.
Please. Yeah,
well,
please.
Hi, Chinary. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm fine. Good to hear your
just
voice.
a simple question. Just a simple question. When you compose, is it through intuition, or or do you think of the instrument before, or is it just by feeling that you are Asian, you are Cambodian, you are you are not Western, or how is it? How is the process of your ideas coming to you and writing them down?
Thank you so much. Maestro, this is not a simple question at all.
Yeah, of course.
But I think all of these things, conscious, subconscious, being rationalized, and all of that, they carry in different modalities and different layers, different dimensions all the time. But if I had to choose, I would say it is a deeper connected from within. And I don't know the reason, but if I'm looking for a reasoning, perhaps I think this could last longer, because I have to endure 10 months to write inner voices, for example. If you're really fascinated only with the physical world and pitches and rhythm and those things at all, I don't think I would last for 10 months. I mean, that is almost impossible. And I think artists need to connect from within. And while experiencing the outer world, learn from the outer world, observe the outer world. But the culture in Southeast Asia, we only recognize what we see, and that is a mistake. And I think we should consider the invisible. The spirit houses, and all of these things as well, because that is precisely the foundation that ignite the culture.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So on that note, we really have to end this very engaging, very stimulating discussion. So join me in clapping your virtual clap for our keynote speaker for today, Dr. Chinary Ung.